Star Trek, the animated series, Season 1, Episode 1, Beyond the Farthest Stars. And before I start on this episode in particular, I want to talk about the show in general, because it's a bit controversial, but personally I really love it, and I think it's a worthy successor to the original series. But I know why it is controversial. I know why a lot of people have problems watching it, and yes, it is an acquired taste and it has some really obvious problems. And there are 4 major problems I want to list before I continue, and those are: 1. The score. I mean, a lot of you probably watched Babylon 5 and then tried to watch Babylon 5 Crusade and thought, wow, this is so much worse, with the score being so much worse. But Star Trek the Animated Series, it's a whole other level, because the score is just so terrible. They have like 3 or 4 tunes that they repeat over and over again, and constantly. They never shut up. And it's louder than all the dialogue. It's constantly going on, and they have 3 or 4 tunes. It's so loud and so annoying and constantly going on. It's so terrible. It's the most terrible score I've ever heard for any show. It's really terrible, and it really, obviously takes a lot of time getting used to it. Okay, problem 2 is that a lot of the scripts were leftovers from the original series, and a lot of the scripts that were written for the series, I think, were also written under the assumption that there would be 1-hour shows. But anyway, all of the scripts seem to be written for 1-hour shows, but it's a half-hour show, and they're always rushing through every episode. Everything seems to be rushing constantly. They seem to be rushing through every episode. Like, let's talk as fast as possible. Let's change scenes. Let's change settings as fast as possible. It's so annoying that they seem to be really rushing through everything. That really also takes a lot of getting used to. Number 3. Yeah, of course it's made by Filmation, so obviously it's half aimed at kids. The writing is really intelligent and really Star Trek, actually, but also obviously they are trying to aim a bit at kids, that kids can understand it, but it only works halfway. It's like half this, half that. On the one hand, it's really good TOS writing. On the other hand, they are kind of throwing things in to be aimed at kids, and it's neither here nor there, and you kind of need to pick it apart to ignore the silly things that they want to throw in to be aimed at kids, and just pay attention to the actual stories, because the stories are actually really good. And number 4 is, when they started this, they were claiming that being an animated series would give them much better option at visual effects than a live action show, and quite honestly, the visual effects when there are explosions or something, or spatial distortions, they are really, really terrible. And the original series, the live action series, actually did it so much better than the animated series, that would have had so much better options at making it look cool. And the visual effects are just horrible. So really, it's an acquired taste. It's like B-movie, kind of. Like, if you're into B-movies, you'll get this show, that you need to suspend your disbelief a bit, that you need to think that, wow, this is actually really horrible when I watch it, but if I follow the story, it's good. It's only good if you follow the story, not if you actually, watch the terrible production values, like I mentioned in the 4 points I just stated. The production values, they're really terrible, and it's so B-movie, it's so terrible. But you need to follow the story. That's when it starts to work. When you get over all that production value stuff that really holds the show back, and just follow the story, that's when it gets to be a worthy successor of the original series, because the stories of the whole show, they're really great. And it starts with this episode where they discover an ancient ship around a dead star with negative mass, which doesn't make much sense, but it's from the 70s, so from our current scientific knowledge, it doesn't make much sense, but in the 70s, as a successor of the original series, it's okay that they discover an ancient ship 300 million years old orbiting a dead star. They discover an ancient civilization, and again there's some silliness that Spock discovers hexagonal patterns and immediately assumes it's made by bees. Like, wow, those are the only things that make hexagonal patterns. What about Giant's Causeway in England? Or is it Ireland? No, that's a Northern Ireland, right? Yeah, it's Northern Ireland, I think, Giant's Causeway. Or is it in Cornwall, like that thing beneath Wales? I don't know. I don't remember actually. But somewhere in the British and Irish Isles, there's that Giant's Causeway that has natural hexagonal patterns. But anyway, Spock sees hexagonal patterns and immediately assumes bees, and it's kind of silly. But the story from there on, ignoring that silliness that hexagonal automatically means bees, from there on, it's actually a really good Star Trek story. You have an energy being, and okay, it's a bit cliche, but you have an energy being that takes over the Enterprise and tries to escape the dead star after 300 million years, and from then on it turns into a really good Star Trek story where the crew of the Enterprise has to overcome the challenge of somehow beating the energy being that controls the Enterprise. The only thing that's a bit weird is someone, I was born in 1982, so I'm someone who grew up on The Next Generation. The episode ends with the energy being ditched and crying about how lonely it has been for so long, and when I think about it, Captain Picard never would have done that, leaving that poor being behind to be eternally alone when it's crying about being so alone. I don't think Captain Picard would have done that, but it's a different era where they let that being try to take over the Enterprise, so it's the deserved punishment from a 60s, 70s point of view. From that era, it had it coming, but as someone who grew up on The Next Generation, Captain Picard would have never treated that being that way. He would have tried to find a solution to make everybody happy. But yeah, it was a really good Star Trek episode, and it was really good. The whole show has really good writing. If you get past the really dodgy production values, the show has a really good run of good writing, good stories. The characters perform really well, even though they seem to be rushing through the episodes and talking twice as fast as they would have done on the original series. It's still really good. The stories are good, and the classic characters are good. They're rushing, yeah, and the production values are terrible. I'm repeating myself. We know that, but because of the quality of the stories, and it starts with this episode showing us some really interesting ideas about ancient civilizations and energy beings interacting with ancient civilizations and ancient technology and all that. It's really a worthy successor to the original series. If you can get past the production problems, especially the god-awful score, then you could really enjoy this, and you should really enjoy this. If you're a Star Trek fan, you should watch this show. You should watch this episode and every episode after it.